Charlie Kirk has been by his side. So a lot of reaction from Washington. Right now, this is a live shot at Timpanogos Regional Hospital. They're right in Orem. That is where Charlie Kirk was taken.
Yeah, we just talked to our reporter, Leslie Duarte, a little while ago, and she said that there's a big police presence there at the hospital as well. Even while she was talking with us, there were even more law enforcement vehicles that had streamed there to the hospital. As far as Charlie Kirk's condition is concerned, we have not had any information on that yet. He was taken there for care. We assume that he was, from the accounts that we hear from witnesses, he was shot in the neck, and that's what some people have posted.
Everybody there that we've heard from has said there was one pop. They only heard one shot, and we aren't getting word of anyone else being injured. There were people screaming, "Run, run," after they did hear the shot. We saw some video on Twitter, somebody who was way up in the stands who was recording, and then you could hear the shot. You couldn't see what happened under the tent where Charlie Kirk was speaking, but you could hear everybody dropping what they were doing and turning and running. Then the shot went blurry after that.
Yeah, the video we were looking at, in fact, CBS has used that video. You hear the pop, and the person who was recording it I don't think realized what had happened, for a couple seconds, and then it was like panic. People were told to drop and then told to run. So if you can imagine, if you were there, there was chaos and fear for sure.
And you can see this is a live look at the hospital there. They did have our crew move back. They did have our crew move off the hospital property, and that's to make room for the investigators, the detectives, the FBI. Everybody's going to be on the scene there to talk to those who were close to Charlie Kirk when the shooting happened.
Yeah, and again, that is look at the emergency vehicles there in front of the UVU campus, and there were hundreds of people, maybe thousands in attendance to this get-together this afternoon. And, this is also, it just kind of occurred to me, a tough time when you think of, the anniversary of 9/11. Tomorrow. And we have a lot of people, obviously, who pay tribute and remember that. And now we have this tragedy on our doorstep.
Yes, and it's a national story as well. CBS News broke in just a few minutes ago to report on the shooting. They're working to get confirmation as well, but from the people we're hearing from on campus at UVU, Charlie Kirk was shot. This rally, I think it started this morning and it was running into the noon hour, and that's when it happened. We got word of it just about a quarter to one. When we were on our noon news.
I think it started right about noon. So, now, as far as traffic goes around the university there, it looks like it is flowing pretty smoothly despite what has happened there. We'll kind of watch that for you too. But right now, all thoughts are on Charlie Kirk, his condition, the circumstances around that. We have not heard anything from the hospital, don't have an update on his condition. And we've been hearing from political leaders across the state, even the president, as we pointed out there. A lot of people in shock as a result of this, and it happened here in Utah at UVU.
It is a conservative political activist, Charlie Kirk, a well-known name, and this was his American comeback tour at UVU. This is our photojournalist, Mike Stephen, right outside the stadium there at Utah Valley University, and he was doing his Prove Me Wrong campaign, where he invited people to come up on stage and argue with him, try to prove him wrong. And he was known for arguing his point and his conservative activism and defending himself very well, like a lawyer. And we understand he's a young father, 31 years old, and prayers coming in from all across the country and around the world for Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, he challenged people to try to stump him. I guess it was somewhat of a sport, too, with what he does. But more importantly, he was driving home his cause, his political beliefs. And as we've seen today, that there are people who take really strong sides issues on both sides. As I mentioned, there was a petition circulating there that they didn't want Charlie Kirk to come to campus, but he did. Doesn't back down with those kinds of things. And then, of course, we've seen what has happened here today.
And such a polarizing figure.
Yeah.
Many didn't want him to come, but obviously many did. And they showed up at that rally this morning. And again, we heard about security. He's not on any board or cabinet for the president.
Yeah, he doesn't get Secret Service protection, obviously.
He's an advisor.
Security is up to these campuses that he visits. Not sure. I'm sure we'll be finding out more about what security measures were in place for his visit, even knowing that he is polarizing and that there are sometimes some pretty hot-head political debates going on. But we don't have an idea of what kind of security measures. I'm sure that there were some, but sometimes there's not. You can't do everything and be everywhere at once.
It might be like a football game.
Yeah.
It might be the same kind of security that they would expect to be at that outdoor arena. That was a nice sunny day this morning as things got started there in Orem.
We have Brian Malahy headed down there too. He's probably in the area.
So Charlie Kirk shot, and man, this stuff is crazy. I'm always talking about all this political stuff. It's not really my thing, not my bag. No disrespect to anyone who is all in this stuff. I just feel like it gets so much division where family members are fighting, and I don't even know, man. It's just wild. It's a different time we live in with the news cycle, with the blogosphere, with everything, man. And it just seems when it comes to the political stuff, people want to off each other. Not a lot of updates as far as his condition or the perpetrator or anything at this point in time. One of the main things I'm actually seeing spoke about in regards to this that everyone seems to be talking about is Charlie Kirk's commentary on the recent release of the footage of Irna. If I'm saying her name incorrectly, I know I am. Apologies, guys. I hear people say her name, and I still pronounce it wrong, though. Obviously, the Ukrainian refugee who was unalived on the bus in North Carolina, and things that he said in regards to all of that. We'll roll some clips on all that in one moment. But one thing you see here is an individual out of the pro wrestling world, right? Conrad, the mortgage guy who puts together all these pro wrestling podcasts, which I'm a fan of, the pro wrestling content and such. He's like, man, America, we got to do better. Like, this shit is scary. I'm paraphrasing, but you see people talking about, oh, you're talking about the left or you're talking about the right. And at the end of the day, everyone's got to live in this country. You know what I mean? It's like people seem to be obsessed with the political narratives. And I just really don't trust any politicians. None of them. Irna, that's how you say her name, right? But let's roll some footage. You see, what's the one guy's name? Everyone's calling him for him to be fired because he said that race was never mentioned. And then there's a clip of dude saying, I got that white girl. And then you'll hear Charlie Kirk's stance on bail stuff and in different discussions and topics about the criminal justice system and criminal justice reform and in bail. And it's like, at the end of the day, there is no one answer to fix any problem. And it's just getting so wild to me that everything is either about politics or racism. And, you know, listen, there's a lot of bullshit that goes on in this country in many different ways, but it's just so wild to me that it's like nothing but nonstop drama when it comes to political stuff, and arguing and just things getting real heated in an online atmosphere. At the end of the day, everyone's got to live in this society, live in America, and all I can say is everyone be safe, try to live life, prosper, try to keep you and your family safe, and deal with things on your own accord. Don't let shit that you're seeing online or the news get you too pumped up and get too fanatical about anything, period. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to dive too much into all this or whatever. I'm just going to roll these clips and close out the video. America 2025. Some people say America is burning. It seems that could indeed be the case. I want to know what everyone thinks about everything that we're speaking on here in these clips, and just again, the news cycle and all this politics stuff, and seemingly the powers that be waging war amongst society, individuals like you or me, everyday people getting aimed at each other. And we all got to keep going on and living and stuff like that. So live your life off experience and your own personal accord and feelings. Don't let someone else tell you how to think or feel is my take. You know what I mean? Again, I see just so much drama and hate going on in this country when it comes to political stuff. I see family members fall out with each other and hate each other and all that. And I just don't know what to make of it, So live your own life, think for yourself. And here go those clips. Subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned over here for crime news, true crime news. Always want to hear from everyone in regards to the debate and discussion on the topics that we're speaking of. And, let's get that discussion going in the comments below. So subscribe. Here's those clips, and the video will conclude.
Hurt people. What happened was horrible, but it becomes an opportunity for people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him. What people mention is the horror of what happened to this young woman. Hurt people. What happened was horrible.
Megan, I'm so glad to have you on here. You live in Charlotte, where the killing of Irina Zarutska occurred, who was an incredible person, a Ukrainian refugee, comes to America and was murdered in cold blood for no reason, a senseless killing by a black person. If a random white person simply walked up to and stabbed a nice, law-abiding black person for no reason, it would be an apocalyptically huge national story used to impose national sweeping political changes on the whole country. Instead, Megan Basham, no one seems to care when a white woman gets stabbed to her death. Why is that?
Yeah, that was pretty shocking to go, for 2 weeks now, none of our major media outlets have covered her at all, not one word. They finally started to cover her a little bit this morning, but only because of the massive public shaming, because this video was so very shocking. And what I really want to emphasize here, Charlie, is that this is not a dangerous part of town where Zarutska was killed. It's a very lovely, popular part of town, bustling restaurants, trendy restaurants, boutiques. My family and I go there frequently on the weekend. So this was an area where you will see families on the weekend. She's a young woman, 23 years old, a refugee, getting off work at a pizzeria and gets onto that light rail. So, the initial reaction of our Democrat mayor was appalling. She said that she didn't mention Irina Zarutska at all in her initial statement. Instead, what she called for was compassion for the perpetrator, who she said is suffering from mental illness just like cancer or heart disease. So we're supposed to have empathy for him as some sort of victim. And she said that we cannot arrest our way to safety, which is, of course, ridiculous. Yes, we can. If we put people behind bars when they're a public threat, we can have safe public streets. But, just to go a little bit more into the weeds on this, I want to let you know that our current governor, who was then Attorney General, his response has also been appalling. So back in 2020, within 2 weeks of George Floyd's murder, he had not only issued public lament, well, I think at this point we can say it was not a murder, but he issued public lament over George Floyd's death. and instituted a new task force for racial equity in criminal justice system. So he initiated an entire task force for George Floyd's death, but it took him longer to acknowledge Irina Zarutska's death. It took him 2 more days than it did to acknowledge George Floyd, even though this happened in his own state where he is governor. So if you look back at what that task force that he implemented in 2020 did, they specifically called for more lenient pre-release policies, meaning they wanted low bail or no bail for minority offenders. They also called for decriminalizing homelessness and quote unquote public behavior, meaning being a public menace on the streets. So these were the very policies that allowed this perpetrator, DeCarlos Brown, to be on the streets. He did in fact receive pre-trial release back in January on his most recent arrest, because he's been arrested 14 times before, including for grand larceny and breaking and entering and assault with a deadly weapon. And almost every time he has been released and given fines and community service and probation. He has not been behind bars where he belongs. And so these were the direct policies that came out of that racial equity task force.
I have so many questions here. So let me just ask a micro question. Has this been talked a lot about in local communities in Charlotte, North Carolina? Are people understanding the racial element here, that a random black guy murdered a white woman? Is it shocking the community? Walk us through what's happening locally here, because I would imagine it should be.
Yeah, I think it is. You know, one of the things you're hearing is that this was a light rail that we all felt perfectly safe using just a few years ago, and we don't feel that way anymore. Because of these policies, you are suddenly seeing an increase in homelessness in the Charlotte area. You know, we came here in 2016, and when we first got here, you really didn't see panhandlers, public disturbances on the street. You see that now when you go into our uptown metro areas. And so I think so many people are feeling that. And when you look at the increasing rates of crime in Charlotte, you can trace it back to 2020. So our last homicide high was in 2020 when the Black Lives Matter riots were occurring on our streets. And the second high of homicide rates in Charlotte were now 2024. So we don't have it for 2025 yet, but for 2024, when they were up 25% from the year before, when these racial equity policies started taking effect. So yes, I think people are very much waking up to the fact that, you know, all of these sort of Black Lives Matter, DEI push policies are having a direct impact on our safety, because the argument was, for the sake of racial equity, we need to not jail black offenders. We need to give them fines and probation. And look, Charlie, this guy's mother, DeCarlos Brown's own mother, tried to get him involuntarily committed. She has said he was not safe to be on the streets, and she actually tried to do something because she knew he was a threat. And instead, we have a criminal justice system here that was sold out to social justice instead of actual justice.